Hi everybody, it's Andy, and welcome again to my office in Modesto, California. I'm an attorney licensed to practice law in California as well as New York, and in this video I'm going to try to go over a pretty basic question actually that I still find a lot of people confused by. A lot of people still kind of find answers online that are wrong, for example, and I'm hoping that with this video I can try to kind of do my small part to correct that, set more people on the right track, for instance. So the answer, or rather the question rather that we're going to go over today is, when is a California divorce done? Or phrased another way, when am I legally divorced in California? So the answer to that question is, a California divorce case is done when you receive a judgment form signed by the judge from the court, when you receive that from the court. So the judgment form in California is the FL 180, the Judicial Council Form FL 180. I have another video on my channel, fairly old one actually, that goes over how to get paperwork in California, how to get court forms like the FL 180. I'm gonna go ahead and link it up above here somewhere. So if you see a little card thing pop out, that's how you get to that video. But if that doesn't work for some reason, I'm gonna go ahead and link the FL 180, a blank one, down below also. When you look at that blank FL 180, there's going to be the word judgment on page 1. That's one sign, I guess, that that's the judgment form. The second page of the FL 180 also has a field for the judge to sign. So that form is the form that you need, signed by the judge, of course, in order to make your case, complete, in order to finish your case. So I guess to be fully correct, I guess, you are not technically divorced when you receive the form. There's a field on the form that basically says the parties are restored to the status of single persons as of, and then a date field. You are divorced, you're single again as of that date, whatever it is. Hopefully it'll be pretty close to whatever date you receive the signed judgment form, but it may not be exactly the same date. So to kind of repeat it again, you are not divorced in California until you receive a signed judgment form, Judicial Council Form FL 180, from the court that bears a judge's signature. So I guess part of the confusion or part of the kind of misinformation, I think, results because in California, divorces are actually done in stages. Depending on how you define it, a stage could be, for example, the petition stage. You fill out the petition, the summons, you serve it, and so on. There's the financial disclosure stage where you have to fill out the income and expense declaration, the Judicial Council Form FL 150. You might have to fill out the Schedule of Assets and Debts, for example. That's the FL 142 form. If you have minor children, rather, in your case, you might have to fill out a lot of child custody paperwork also. You might have discovery-related stuff that you have to basically do. You might have mediation paperwork, etc. Like, there's any number of combinations of paperwork that you might have to do for your case. But a lot of times, I guess, because there are stages involved, people sort of erroneously believe, oh, well, I just filed a petition and I send it to the court and I wait 6 months or something, and that basically is it. My divorce is automatic after 6 months. So that's not the case. I have another video on my channel that I think, I know I have one that goes over the 6 month and 1 day thing that a lot of times people will kind of see, I guess. Try to link that kind of up there somewhere. But I have a video on the 6 month and 1 day thing. And I think I also have a video entitled Automatic Divorce, although I don't recall off the top of my head. But the important thing is that even though you submit the petition and you just wait, your divorce is not automatic after 6 months. That's not how the divorce process in California works. In order to be divorced, you have to get the signed judgment form from the court that bears a judge's signature. Your case is done, quote unquote, when you receive that form. You might not technically be single as of the day you receive the form. You got to look on the form to see what date single person status is restored. So that's the basic idea. Like many people seem to think that because California divorce cases go in stages, all you need to do is do the petition stage, submit the paperwork, and just wait, and you're done. That's not how it works. You need the signed judgment form. So I guess a related question to this is, what happens if you remain married to a person unintentionally or otherwise? So I don't have a video on this, although in thinking about it now, it might actually be a good video topic. But if you don't get divorced from a person or you unintentionally remain married to them, there's two big problems at least that occur. So the first one, I don't know if it's a big problem necessarily, but it's one of those things that kind of comes up on you all of a sudden. If you remain married to somebody that you don't want to be married to, there's a thing called intestate succession that occurs if you or the other or your spouse were to die suddenly without a will. So intestate succession, I think I have a blog post on it, but not a video necessarily. But intestate succession is what happens basically when somebody dies and they don't leave a will. Intestate succession is what happens to their stuff. How is it divided amongst family members, for example. Under intestate succession in California, at least, your spouse, legal spouse, doesn't have to be the person you live with, just the person you are legally married to. They stand to gain a lot of stuff automatically. So think of it like if you remain married to your husband and you just don't want to get divorced because you're too lazy or something, or you can't figure out how to do it. If you remain married to your husband legally, or remain married to your wife legally, and you die all of a sudden, a lot of your stuff could, against your wishes, go to this person that is legally your spouse, although that's just because you haven't divorced them or something. So, yeah, the idea of their, basically of their spouse, some estranged spouse, getting their stuff usually does not sit well with the person. So, if it was me, I would get divorced just for that reason, basically. Number two, which actually probably is the more urgent concern, is that if you don't get divorced, properly, like if you don't get a signed judgment form, you are still legally married, which means that any other marriage that you enter into would be bigamous. In California, at least, bigamy is not allowed. So it becomes a whole big mess then. So if you have spouse number one over here and then spouse number two over here, you think erroneously that spouse number one is that you're divorced from him or her, for example. Then you get into marriage number two with spouse number two over here. But because this marriage over here never ended via divorce, this marriage becomes bigamous, which causes a lot of problems with community property in this marriage over here. Children, if any, from this marriage, custody becomes a problem. If there's, if this spouse, like if you die, for example, this spouse might have a problem claiming a lot of stuff via intestate succession. It's a whole big mess, and all of it results because you didn't get fully divorced in the first place. So, I think that basically covers it. To kind of repeat myself yet again, a divorce in California is done when you get a signed judgment form, from the court, from the court clerk that bears the judge's signature. So your divorce is done when you get a judgment form, the Judicial Council Form FL 180, blank one linked down below, from the court that bears the judge's signature. Until you get that, you are still legally married. You're separated, but you're legally married. So that's a really important distinction. You cannot just fill out the petition, submit the petition, wait 6 months, and be divorced. That's not how it works in California. Again, hopefully that helps. Hopefully that doesn't kind of disappoint anybody out there, but the divorce process is a lot of times way more involved than a lot of people think. I don't have data on this. I've never done a study. I'm not aware of any studies on this, but from what I've seen, heard, and so on, a lot of times people who are doing their divorce themselves, they tend to abandon, so like you have a lot of abandoned cases, for example, like, you go through the petition stage, but you don't do any of the other stages because, for instance, it's too difficult. The person believes erroneously that they are divorced already. So you have a lot of people who basically file cases and then the case gets abandoned really quickly. So I'm hoping there are not that many people out there who think that an abandoned case, I'm hoping there's not a lot of people out there who have abandoned their cases because they erroneously believe that they're divorced already. I unfortunately get the suspicion, though, that I am wrong. That a lot of people actually do abandon their cases because they believe incorrectly that they are divorced already, when they're actually not. So, again, hopefully all that helped. I don't mean to kind of, cause anyone to panic or anything, but that is basically how the law works in California. So, again, hopefully all that helped. Go ahead and like, comment, share, subscribe, all that, kind of nice stuff. And I will talk to you guys next time. Thanks.